colors.
So I feel like the most important thing, and I've said this a bajillion times, and I'm sorry to belabor it, but that's to understand the passage. And I think that's going to consist of two things. One, to understand the passage, what do you have to understand first?
The main point?
You do have to understand the main point, but before you even get there, you have to understand something else. What?
The first sentence?
The first sentence, and every sentence after that. Your understanding of the passage happens on a sentence-by-sentence level. So if you don't understand a sentence and you're like, oh, move on, you're sort of moving on precisely when you should start doubling down, right? So you have to understand the sentences, and sometimes, actually, a lot of times on the LSAT, in logical reasoning and in reading comprehension, that means taking what they've written and translating it into your own words, because they are horrible writers and they do that by design. So you're never going to get around that. And they like to talk about esoteric things. But have confidence in yourself. If you slow down, reread a sentence, I am confident that the vast majority of these sentences you can figure out, and once you understand them, then you can play ball, as they say, right? The other thing that you have to understand, any guess, in addition to understanding the sentences? Yeah?
Understanding his opinion.
Oh, yeah, certainly. The author's opinion. Let's, I'm going to step back for 1 second and talk about, well, we can talk about opinion. That's good. So these sentences tend to fall into two categories. They're either asserting what the author believes, or they're asserting what someone else believes. And if you're not aware of the fact that the author is quoting someone else, you're missing something big, right? This happens a lot of times. They will quote someone in the whole first paragraph, maybe even the whole second paragraph, and then the author will start telling you what he or she thinks. And one of the questions will say, the author of the passage would most likely agree with one of the following ideas, and one of those ideas comes from the first paragraph, and you're like, oh yeah, that was said. I know that. And you pick that answer, but you forgot to kind of separate these two parts of the passage. When is the author talking and when is someone else talking? And unfortunately, sometimes these things, or fortunately, I don't know, they can get interweaved, right? You have the author quoting someone else and then commenting on that, and then quoting someone else and then commenting on that. So just be very aware of, as you read each sentence, is it the opinion of the author or is it the opinion of someone else, okay? Now, when the author does quote someone else, usually the opinion of the author comes right after that. And that is more important, because at the end of the day, we're trying to figure out, what does the author believe? Why did you sit down and write this distinctive passage? Okay. Another thing that we're looking for here is structure. So there tends to be two different types of readers. There are those who are very good at reading sentences and understanding details, and those individuals tend to do well in logical reasoning, but not so well in reading comprehension, which also tests your ability to understand the overall structure, right? You have the flip of that. Some people who are really good at understanding the structure of the passage, they get the big picture, they can follow the general structure, but they have trouble with the little details, and this can hurt with the inference questions in reading comprehension. What I think the best way to be good at both of these is to make sure you understand every sentence, to, once you know what the sentence is saying, anticipate where the author is going, because when you anticipate where you think the author is going and they go in that direction, that affirms what you thought, or maybe they go in a different direction and you're just aware of that. You're like, oh, whoa, I thought you were going to say the environment is being hurt by this practice, but maybe it's actually being helped. That surprise can just help you become more aware of what's going on. But every now and then, maybe after every paragraph, but it doesn't have to be that arbitrary. It really just depends on when you feel like stopping and kind of reassessing, where have we come so far and where are we going? It's a momentary thing. It's like 15 seconds. It's probably even faster than that. It's like 5 seconds. But you're just thinking about, hey, where have we been and where are we going? That can help you sort of understand the structure, which is a little bit different than understanding each individual sentence, right? So, bottom line, as you read, just make sure you're trying to understand what's going on, anticipate where you think the author is going, and having some sort of reaction to what the author is saying, and then occasionally stepping back and seeing how everything fits together. And so then when you get to the end of the passage, it should be pretty easy to summarize the main point. The last thing that we need to do is we need to remember what was said. Right? Now, that can be challenging too. Sometimes we're going through a question, we're like, I have no memory of this being discussed. This happens, though, when you're engaged and have some sort of reaction to the passage. The more that you take sentences and you turn them into your own words, the more you're engaged with that material, right? And then if you have some sort of reaction to that, like, oh, that's weird, or that's stupid, or, that makes sense, I guess. That fits my worldview. Whatever your reaction might be, it solidifies that information so that when you get done and you're going through the questions, you remember more of what you read. So many times I'm answering questions and I'm like, I know this was said because I had some sort of reaction to it. I thought that was weird or that was strange or whatever. And then it's like, well, we start talking about the question after the fact and people are like, well, where was that said? I'm like, I don't know. I think it was like in the third paragraph. I just know that it was said. But that's saving a lot of time. I'm not saying not to ever go back. You certainly can and should go back in some cases. But to the extent you can get this passage in your mind, the better, the easier it is to just plow through these questions and get them done. So typically, this whole process, at least for me, takes between 3.5, 4.5 minutes. I feel like that's longer than what a lot of people spend on reading the passage. So I'm not saying that's right. Everyone's different. Some of you might be faster readers than I am. But to have the level of understanding that I want before I go into the questions and therefore feel confident about any question they might throw at me, I'm going to need to spend that amount of time. I almost never spend 2.5 minutes. Whereas I see a lot of people who do it in like 1.5 minutes. That's awesome if that's possible. And you leave with a good understanding of what's going on. If you don't, though, you might need to just slow down. And I think it will help you go faster through the questions. So, all right. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Just have confidence in yourself. If you engage with this, you can understand it, and you can answer whatever question they throw at you. I'm confident of that.